So when The Undertaker said that about CM Punk, I was like, oh boy. Things are about to get interesting. We're about to hear The Undertaker shoot, brother. After staying in character for over 30 years, finally, Mark Calloway shows us the man behind The Undertaker in the one deadman show. Is it worth your time and money? I'm Gregory Iron, and that's what we're going to find out today. Before we get to this video, though, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel so you can get much more wrestling content like this. And if you want even more of the podcast, go to patreon.com/irononwrestling. The One Dead Man show took place at the Agora in Cleveland, Ohio, which over the years has notably hosted events like NXT and back in the 90s, ECW. Now, one of the biggest superstars in the history of professional wrestling. No cell phones are allowed in the building, so you don't really get to capture any photos or videos. They're all about the personal experience. While you're there, you can go to the merchandise stand. You can pick up a variety of Undertaker items, some of which I feel like were overpriced, but that's how they get you when you're at a live event. However, I did have to pick up the Undertaker One Dead Man show program. I thought it was pretty sweet looking, and I do feel like it would be a collectible item one day, which is why I bought two. One for me and one to resell to you one day for an absurd amount of money. While you're waiting for the One Dead Man show to start, you just kind of sit there and you listen to some music that I feel like was obviously chosen by The Undertaker because they played like a bunch of Kid Rock and Metallica. At one point, they sit out a small round black table. They put a bottle of Jack Daniels on the table, which is why I have one on display here, because if you know me, I don't drink. So why would I have Jack Daniels? Why would I even do a podcast or a video behind a bar? I don't know. It doesn't really make much sense. Shut up. All right? Don't at me. Eventually, they begin to play Rollin' by Limp Bizkit. And boy, does The Undertaker really milk this. Like 3 minutes into the song, a curtain opens and The Undertaker is standing there. Kind of like this. Did I do that right? Hold on. And then he does this. Huge pop, okay? This guy knows how to work, brother. That's why he's The Undertaker. The way it starts was interesting because it's just... I think the big selling point about this is you are never going to see The Undertaker like this in public and on camera. And I think that's the main reason why you're not allowed to have video in the building. Because it really is an intimate experience and something that, as a fan, you really never thought that you were going to see out of The Undertaker. Right from the rip, The Undertaker tells the crowd that they're going to be honorary members of the BSK. That, of course, is the Bone Street Crew. The One Dead Man show began with The Undertaker telling a story about a bar experience with the Godwins, two members of the BSK. And it was interesting that he started with this because, well, the culture behind the scenes in WWE was a lot different back then, and there might have been some illegal substances involved. And Undertaker actually talks about the Godwins using some illegal substances and him having to carry them out of the bar and across the street to their hotel room so Chairman Vince McMahon didn't see them and potentially fire them. At one point, he talks about the equality and the diversity in the BSK that was ahead of its time. 30 years ago, the BSK had Puerto Ricans, Samoans, whites, blacks. And when he said blacks, a guy in the crowd yelled, "Yeah!" And then The Undertaker responded with, "Oh, that guy over there, love that. Yeah, blacks, come on!" And I just thought it was funny. It's a funny thing to see The Undertaker just be a dude. I mean, that's what he is. He's just a dude. A dead dude. At one point, The Undertaker claims that he's going to try out something for the first time ever, something he likes to call Dead Man Smart Mark Jeopardy. Doesn't exactly have the best ring to it, but it didn't seem like any of the three people really knew the trivia very well. It took them longer than it should for a Smart Mark. It was a nice little interactive thing to do, and he ended up giving them each a program signed by The Undertaker, so a little cool gift to give away there. I guess it's important to point out that following his one story about the Godwins, it's basically just a Q&A with a light show. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. So, what type of questions were asked? Should Brock Lesnar have ended the streak? The Undertaker candidly stated that he did not think that Brock should have ended the streak. Brock was already established. He did think that it was credible that someone like Brock, who was in the UFC, would have beat him, but he would have rather had someone like Roman Reigns end the streak. And that got a mixed reaction from the crowd, and The Undertaker said that while Roman wasn't in the place that he is now, he thinks that it might have helped get him closer to that place, because no matter what, he was being pushed as the guy. One fan asked, do you have any good Scott Hall stories? And at first, The Undertaker said he didn't have any real stories with Scott because they never really traveled together or anything. But then he thought about it and he said, actually, I got a good one. When Razor Ramon first came into the company in 1992, The Undertaker was firmly established in his character as The Undertaker at that point. One particular evening of house shows, they worked 2 times against each other. Earlier in the day, when The Undertaker went to pin Razor after the tombstone, Scott stiffened up and would not allow him to fold his arms over his chest for the pinfall. After the match, Undertaker said, and he did this in a Scott Hall, Razor Ramon voice, "Hey, Chico, I'm not some sort of job guy, okay? I'm not going to be jobbed out every night. You're not going to fold my arms over my chest." And The Undertaker said, well, that's kind of what I do. That's my thing. You know, I fold the arms over the chest when I beat him. And Scott was a little combative about that. And Undertaker was just kind of like cool hand Luke. And he says, okay, that's fine. So he had a plan. He knew exactly how he was going to defeat Razor Ramon later that night. He was simply going to place one finger on his chest after he defeated him on the second match of the evening, just to prove a point, to see what Razor Ramon would do. But The Undertaker believes that somewhere along the way, Scott was smartened up, thought better of the situation, and after The Undertaker hit the tombstone, Scott had no problem going like this himself. And Undertaker didn't even have to touch him. The Undertaker was asked who his second favorite tag team partner is after Kane. The answer? Dan Spivey. Of course, The Undertaker teamed with Dan Spivey in WCW as one half of the Skyscrapers. They worked a series of matches with the Road Warriors. And even though they were building to a program on pay-per-view, Dan Spivey was getting a little PO'd that they were losing every single night. One night, Dan had had enough. And he looked at Undertaker and he said, "Kid, follow my lead tonight." And so during this match, Dan proceeded to beat the shit out of the Road Warriors single-handedly with a steel chair. When The Undertaker got to the back that night, he's looking at Dan and he's thinking he's ready to fight. When the Road Warriors walk in this locker room, he's going to have to throw down. Road Warriors come into the locker room. They walk right past The Undertaker. They go right to Dan. They say, "Oh my God, that was great, brother. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, couldn't have been better." And then they look at Mark and they go, "You did great, kid." Needless to say, Dan Spivey had proven a point to the Road Warriors that he wasn't going to take no shit from anybody. When Hawk and Animal walked away, he simply looked at Mark from across the room and went. Side note, The Undertaker claims that not only was Dan a badass, but he also ran prostitutes in Tampa, Florida. So, yeah. One of the typical questions that's asked to pro wrestlers are, what is your all-time favorite match? And this question was also asked to The Undertaker. His answer was simple. If you had to pin him down to one, it would be versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. The Undertaker stated that it's the closest thing that he'll ever get to a perfect match, even with the dive where he almost broke his neck. Taker was also asked who he had the best chemistry with in ring. Taker began to ran down a list of names of guys that he really gelled well with. Kurt Angle, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Edge, of course, the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. But he said if he had to pick one person that he had the best chemistry with of all, it would be Triple H. And while he stated that he doesn't like to put himself over, he claims that he believes his 4-match series with Shawn at WrestleMania 25, 26, and his 2 matches with Triple H at 27 and 28 is the best 4-match, 4-year story in wrestling history. One fan asked The Undertaker what it was like to be set on fire at the Elimination Chamber. Taker proceeded to tell the story about how a week or 2 prior, he had addressed concerns in a production meeting with Vince and the pyrotech guy, saying that fire is getting a little too close to him. The pyrotech guy says that he thinks that there have been too many drafts in the building, and that it's blowing the fire in his direction. And he said this with a straight face. Fast forward to the Elimination Chamber match. He's the World Heavyweight Champion going into it, defending his championship. And of course, if you've seen the clip, The Undertaker makes a beeline to the ring. That was not intended because he was on fire. Luckily for him, he had said that he had poured a bottle of water onto his head before going out there. He had changed jackets. He went from a Hellraiser type jacket that he was originally going to wear, which would have exposed his arms, to his duster because it thought that it would look better with the World Heavyweight Championship on display. He gets into the pod and he can see the skin blistering and bubbling on his chest and on his arm. Truly terrifying. The refs keep asking him if he wants to just go to the back and get medical attention. But being The Undertaker, he decides he's going to wrestle the whole damn match. I think the most noteworthy moment of the deadMan show is when someone asked, what do you think of CM Punk? And do you think he should return to the WWE? The Undertaker's reaction was one of, oh boy, I'm going to answer this question and I'm going to tell the truth, and you may or may not like it. The Undertaker stated right off the bat that he has never had a problem with Phil. They always got along pretty well, and he thinks that they had one of his better matches at WrestleMania. I'd have to agree with that. In fact, if it were me, I would say that it was probably his final great WrestleMania match. He brought up one story about him and CM Punk that occurred at an airport. This was the time period in the WWE where they wanted the guys to dress business casual, and while The Undertaker thought that that was absurd, he sort of liked to give advice and make sure that the guys were abiding by the policy. The Undertaker noticed that Punk wasn't wearing business casual. Taker walked up to Phil and he says, hey Phil, I think it's kind of dumb, but they're really wanting us to wear business casual attire, so I think you might want to start dressing a little better. To which Punk replied, well, John Cena still wears shorts. And The Undertaker told him, well, you're not John Cena. The Undertaker said, in my opinion, you know what? I think the guy is overrated. I think he has a place in the wrestling business, but I don't think it's in the WWE. I'm always kind of on the fence. Should we see CM Punk back in the WWE? I don't know. But The Undertaker doesn't think so. The show was supposed to be 90 minutes in length, but because of some microphone issues, The Undertaker actually went for 2 hours. And with it all said and done, American Badass started playing. He thanked everybody for coming out. And then before he left, I don't know if you can guess what he did upon his exit. This is him walking away. And then he stopped dramatically. And he looked back like this. People say I look a lot like The Undertaker when I do this.
Are you scared?
And then he did this. And the crowd popped! The Undertaker has maintained this aura, this presence about him for 30 years. Or for some people, they might say that The Undertaker of now floor-to-ceiling interviews and podcasts is ruining their childhood. But for me personally, I love documentaries. I love to see what's going on behind the scenes. Sometimes I'll watch behind-the-scenes footage of movies that I've never even watched because sometimes truth is stranger, funner, and cooler than fiction. The Undertaker is a true legend. Do I recommend The Undertaker One Dead Man show? I don't think we're ever going to see The Undertaker do a Comic-Con where he answers questions. And so I think for longtime wrestling fans and big-time Undertaker fans, I think this is the best personal experience that you could get with arguably one of the greatest of all time. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe below, leave a comment. Do you think CM Punk should come back to the WWE? Have you went to the Undertaker One Dead Man show? Would you go again? Would you like to see another wrestler from the past do a one-man show like the Taker's doing? Why did I call him the Taker? I don't know. Just comment below.